Join us on Patreon and become part of our journey to uncover history's untold stories. Your support helps us create in-depth content, bring hidden narratives to life, and keep history alive for everyone.
History is filled with stories that are buried beneath the weight of time, stories that hold whispers of people whose existence has been nearly erased. Among these tales are the mysterious disappearance of the Black-Skinned Susquehannock people and the haunting legacy of the Colfax Massacre of 1873. These two events, though separated by time and geography, share a common thread: the violent forces of displacement and erasure that have long shaped the histories of marginalized communities in America. Today, we dive deep into these forgotten chronicles, unraveling their truths and placing them back into the annals of history where they belong. The Susquehannock people were once a formidable force in the mid-Atlantic region of North America. Their villages lined the banks of the Susquehanna River, a powerful and vital waterway that provided them with sustenance, trade, and security. Early European settlers described them as a strong, towering people, feared by rival tribes and respected for their military prowess. What is less commonly known, however, is that some historical accounts and oral traditions suggest that a segment of the Susquehannock population was dark-skinned, possibly indicating early African ancestry or a distinct indigenous lineage that predated European contact. European explorers and colonial administrators initially engaged with the Susquehannock in trade, particularly in fur, but these interactions soon turned into bloody conflicts. By the 17th century, the Susquehannock had been caught in the crossfire of European imperial ambitions. The English, Dutch, and French vied for control over indigenous lands, turning native nations against each other. Disease, war, and forced displacement took their toll, decimating the population. The final blow came in the late 1600s when the Susquehannock were brutally attacked by the Maryland and Virginia militias, leaving them weakened and scattered. Some surviving members merged with other tribes, such as the Haudenosaunee, Iroquois, while others seemingly vanished. Oral histories among certain African American and indigenous communities hint at the absorption of the Black-Skinned Susquehannock into marginalized settlements, where they blended with runaway enslaved Africans and other displaced indigenous groups. Over time, their distinct identity faded into history, lost to records that prioritized the narratives of conquerors over the conquered. What remains today are fragments, names of places, archaeological remains, and stories that refuse to be silenced. While the story of the Susquehannock's disappearance is one of forced assimilation and erasure, the Colfax Massacre of 1873 is a stark reminder of how violent resistance to racial equality has shaped the American landscape. Following the Civil War, the Reconstruction era promised a new beginning for freed African Americans. The 14th and 15th Amendments granted citizenship and voting rights, empowering Black communities in the South. Louisiana, with its large Black population, saw significant political shifts as Black men took office and participated in governance for the first time in history. However, these gains were met with fierce resistance from white supremacists who sought to dismantle Reconstruction through intimidation and violence. The Colfax Massacre was a direct result of this volatile period. After a disputed gubernatorial election in Louisiana, tensions flared between white Democrats, who wanted to reclaim political control, and Black Republicans, who fought to protect their newly won rights. In Grant Parish, Black citizens, fearing violent reprisal, gathered at the Colfax courthouse to defend the Republican government. They fortified the building, prepared to resist any attempts to unseat the officials legally elected by the people. On April 13, 1873, Easter Sunday, a white mob composed of former Confederate soldiers and members of the Ku Klux Klan surrounded the courthouse. They were heavily armed and determined to crush the Black resistance. As gunfire erupted, the Black defenders held their ground for hours, but they were outgunned and outnumbered. When their ammunition ran low, many attempted to flee. What followed was a gruesome and calculated slaughter. The white mob pursued and executed dozens of Black men in cold blood. Some were shot as they tried to escape, while others were captured and murdered in execution-style killings. The courthouse was set on fire, and those who surrendered were brutally massacred. By the end of the day, an estimated 150 Black men had been killed, making the Colfax Massacre one of the deadliest acts of racial violence in American history. In the aftermath, federal authorities attempted to bring the perpetrators to justice, but the legal system failed the victims. The landmark case United States versus Cruikshank, 1876, saw the Supreme Court overturn convictions of the white attackers, ruling that the federal government had limited power to prosecute individuals for civil rights violations. This decision emboldened white supremacists across the South and paved the way for the Jim Crow era, ensuring that racial violence could continue with impunity. The stories of the Susquehannock people and the Colfax Massacre may seem like separate tragedies, but they reveal a larger pattern of racial violence, displacement, and historical erasure. Both are reminders of the fragility of justice in the face of systemic oppression and the importance of reclaiming lost histories. Though the Susquehannock people disappeared from recorded history, their memory persists in place names, oral traditions, and the silent echoes of a once thriving civilization. The Colfax Massacre, though long overshadowed, remains a testament to the resilience of Black Americans who fought for their rights despite overwhelming odds. These stories deserve to be told, not as mere footnotes in history, but as essential narratives that challenge us to confront the past and demand a more just future. The erasure of a people and the massacre of a community are not simply moments to be mourned, but lessons to be learned. Only by acknowledging these histories can we begin to understand the true foundations of our present world.